Colors so fake, oh no. The forecast said that there'd be snowflakes. Whoa, you can make us see it your way. No way, gasoline and propane. More flames, oh no. No more snowflakes.
We can all get along, but there's no stopping. Ay, everybody's wrong, that's a real problem. Ay, they don't want to hear it, but they still talking. Ay, soon enough, we running out of options. Ay, this ain't gonna end till it's in the coffin. Ay, we ain't gonna be friends till we try to squash it. Ay, I don't know how we can make amends or we drop it. Snowflakes melt when it's hot, kid.
Y'all are so fake, oh no. The forecast said that there'd be snowflakes. Whoa, you can make us see it your way. No way, gasoline and propane. More flames, oh no. No more snowflakes.
Hey everybody, this is Amária Sweet with HeartMind Expressions and the Fab Four. Tonight we've got Soma McClure and AlexSpielman with us. Real quick, I'll do some plugs and we've got some fun things we've been toying with. So a big shout out to, of course, Rev Radio Las Vegas and C4OC Radio Networks. You guys are awesome. Thanks so much for airing the show, keeping it on your page. Check them out. There's some awesome indie music. They love to play with different local artists, a lot of metal and rock bands, really cool stuff. Tim Saxon is one of the musicians that's featured quite a bit. He's pretty awesome. Shout out, Tim. So lots of love, you guys. Thank you so much for listening to us. We are very grateful for all of our listeners. It's been pretty sporadic in and out, but hey, we're still going, so rock on. Sue and Alex. So you guys were talking recently about kind of like mixing wool and linen, like from the old scriptures. Do you want to kind of bring us up to speed what you're talking about? And let's get some juicy talks going on.
Well, in Leviticus, by the way, hi everyone. Missing, a lot of stuff going on here in the world. But in Leviticus, I believe that they were talking about, how everything is run with vibrations. Everything on this planet, vibration. Everything that we are, vibration. So it appears that, there's a vibration on when you have fabric, when you wear your clothes and things. And so I guess linen has a positive vibration and it's supposed to make you feel better. Alex is actually very good at explaining how that works. Alex?
Yeah. Hi. Good evening. So one of the things that I was looking into this was I always found Leviticus to be something that was very odd and off than your traditional parables and lessons. It was out of place. Like one would be like, oh, you must respect one another, be good to each other, and then Leviticus is like, no, you should not be doing this. It's an abomination, and you should not be doing it. And I'm like, whatever happened to this mood whiplash? What the heck's going on? So I eventually started looking at this not as a parable, but as maybe it's like a dummy's guide to how you live life, if you will. I'm probably I don't do 99% of the stuff in there. But anyways, one of the things that they talk about was that you don't mix linen and wool or it is unseemly. So I went to look that up. And as we all talk about frequency, vibration, and how, we have to mind ourselves with those things. Apparently, there's a reason why, and we've actually know the reason why, which is that linen and wool have frequencies of, I believe it's 5,000 hertz. Now, a linen, the energy in linen rotate a certain direction, whereas wool is also 5,000, but it rotates the other direction. Thus, it neutralizes itself. things like cotton and other poly mixes are only about 100 hertz. So you can you can understand where it's just like much more powerful to have linen versus others. And this, I mean, this, when you go into like the different descriptions, you learn that linen will be more beneficial to health situations, whether it's physical, mental, psychological, neurological. Um, I haven't tested out for myself, so I can't tell you exactly, but it seems interesting that a lot of the people of the old times would be using things like linen and other similar textiles. And
So
wool
does
was
it specify what linen is made of, or is it just kind of referring to like man-made items that's linen, or
I it's since it is written in a older term, I'm not sure.
be interesting to find out. And then like thinking wool, because you mentioned like, cotton poly mix, which is actually pretty common. And then what spandex is another addition. And so it makes me wonder what those are like, if it's kind of like that linen wool mix, or if it's different frequencies.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Interesting to figure that out, huh?
Well, linen is actually from a flax plant. The finest
really?
linen come from Europe.
Huh.
They actually come from Belgium. Optimal climate, rich soil allows strong, beautiful flax. That's the only kind of linen that I'm aware of. I think there are 3 kinds.
Yeah,
Trying to find it.
there's a
Damask linen, most delicate variety, which is similar to embroidery. There's plain, and there's loosely woven. And so it just, do we know where else it comes from?
Flax? I mean, I know it's a
Besides-
commonly grown grain. I actually worked on a farm with like flax and mustard and stuff. We worked with those grains, but I mean, I know they're good for you. They have like your omegas, and so I'm wondering, I guess the plant itself must be really fibrous if they're making fabric out of it. Then maybe it's really soft once it's been like, because you kind of, I know like when you're making fabrics, you try to remember what you call it when you kind of beat it on like a brush thing where you're pulling the fibers, combing it, I think. You do that with like wool and cotton and other things, and then as you're combing or brushing it or whatever, you start twisting and then start making your threads. But I know most of that's done by machines now, except for traditional craftsmen
Yeah,
and stuff.
they said how to check to see if the linen is real. It says look for natural colors, because linen isn't very elastic, so you can search for wrinkles throughout the fabric. Linen fabric is very durable, resistant, long-lasting, and strong. It's highly absorbent. It's moisture wicking. The imperfections are the sign of a true linen. What makes it so appealing, he said.
Interesting. I'm wondering if I've had linen then.
It will
'Cause I've
shrink by 3 to 10% during the first wash.
Hmm.
So you wash it in cold water.
Or
you
get it
hang
the
it on a
sides up,
line.
right?
Yeah.
So what?
It proves that they were a pretty advanced enough society back, and I
Yeah.
mean that's another notch to even prove. We had lots of things that over the show that we made that would prove that during Bible times were actually more advanced than they let on.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
so if they were advanced enough to take some sort of a plant and make clothes with it,
so
you know,
we're going to read a quick excerpt. So linen is hypoenergetic, antibacterial, antifungal. It keeps the body cooler in hot temperatures and warm during the cold temperatures. It can absorb moisture. It can resist dirt and stains. It does not produce static electricity. In fact, it can just kill it. And it's also resistant to things like radiation.
That probably explains why, if they did find the shroud of Jesus,
Shroud of Turin.
all those years ago, and it survived, normal regular material would have disintegrated.
Mm-hmm.
So it's because if it's durable enough, it could last, then chances are that was made out of linen then.
Mm-hmm. So like I was saying, linen and wool both have frequencies of 5,000, where humans naturally we naturally resonate around 70 to 90. So we're talking a massive boost or drop, depending.
Right. That's like crystal energies, angel frequencies. That's really cool.
Yeah. All synthetic fibers have 0 frequency. But things like rayon is 15, unbleached organic cotton is 40, silk is 10, traditional cotton is 10.
That's interesting that cotton and silk is less than cotton, which is interesting. And yet silk is a higher paid material.
Shorts I was wearing earlier today. And yeah, it's like cotton, polyester, and spandex mixed. Interesting.
So this is why I find it so interesting, because ancients were not stupid. In fact, they were very, very intelligent about what they were doing. So it really makes you wonder at this point why why is it generally accepted that we use cotton? Cotton is just the common fabric that most people use. Things like spandex and polyester will have no resonation. They won't resonate whatsoever due to them being synthetic.
And it doesn't do good for chunky people when it comes to spandex.
No.
Well, and I'm wondering if on the cotton
I put myself in those. I kind of look like a bowling ball stuck in a utility pipe. So.
Oh boy. I wonder if like the cotton mixes, if they have a similar frequency change.
I don't know, but it does make you wonder why like Fruit or Loom companies and stuff like that constantly commercial on TV. They talk about you should never eat anything that's commercialed on TV, never take any medication that's commercialed on TV, and yet cotton is one of the widely commercial material that's on TV. So now you start to wonder.
Well, cottonseed oil is actually highly toxic, just like rapeseed or canola oil, because those are supposed to be, I think, neurotoxic. I know Dr. Bergman talks about it, but just crap like that, it's just really not good for you. So
no, they make good fire starters though. I actually take cotton balls and use any kind of cheap oil, grapeseed, or even just regular vegetable oil, and you can use it as a fire starter. You just put a little bit on a cotton.
Rubbing alcohol is really good too.
Yeah, and you wrap it up in like newspaper, and you do a whole bunch of that in those chimney things that you use for the grill, and it actually makes the fire really, really hot for the coals and things like that. It's actually very good fire starter. So I have like those gallon jugs of vegetable oil just to use them as fire starters.
Interesting.
Really smart.
So it looks. Will just be fantastic, and anything else, it doesn't nearly do anything, if not it's more detrimental. So I think that's something that needs to be looked into much more, because if we're just finding this stuff out, I would be not surprised to see a plethora of other stuff in just future searches for it.
It makes sense. I mean, she graduated from seminary. You think as a teenager and a young woman, I would have paid more attention to stuff like that. But I mean, you never really think about that for nowadays. You think, oh, cool, all these neato clothes that we get to wear. And I'm actually curious about my work shirt. Like, what is it made out of?
Well, they do sell linen products on Amazon, though.
100% polyester. My little chef jacket. That's funny.
Yeah, my chef jacket's made the same.
Those are so hot too. Woo.
Yeah, it's not comfortable to wear. I own like two. I own a white and a black one. So
yeah, I wish we would.
I should
wear
own
the
a gray one
flowers.
so I can say I'm kind of having a salt and pepper day. But anyway,
Make
Yeah.
it half and half.
yeah, kind of, you feeling salty? Anyway,
There you go.
so, but it's just that they are selling them. So it looks like somebody's aware of its existence. They do sell them on Amazon. There are several clothing companies that do sell them as well. So it's not, it's not unavailable or anything. It's just that I think with a lot of things that goes on in the world, things are quietly out there. They're not going to advertise them because it would put the other companies out of business.
Yep, I think so.
Definitely makes sense. So you had some theories on relations to things. Do you want to go into your theories, Alex? I always love these. They're so interesting.
Well, yeah, so there was a theory I had, and it had to do actually with the great battle in heaven they had between the fallen angels and the angels of God. And as we know, what happened was eventually the fallen angels went to earth. They stuck with the women, and that's when the Nephilim came into play. Children of man and fallen angel. So the reason why I started looking at this is because I recently went back to my playlist I have of just stuff about Tartaria. And what's so curious about this is that the giants that are, that are Nephilim are generally around the same height as others, like places around the world. We talk about how there was a great shrinking of the size of people. There was at one time people were, 60 feet, then they went to 30 feet, and then they went to 10, 5, things like that. And it's usually believed by some people that the fact that we have things like gigantism is a leftover trait of that. It's also the reason why we have the reverse of that, which is dwarfism. So it went to Tartaria. And the reason it went to Tartaria was because where would these Nephilim go, right? After they're banished and they're trying to kill each other, what would they do? Well, eventually what they want to do is they would want to build a society for themselves. Well, the first place I thought was, well, maybe this is Atlantis. Maybe they built this out in the Atlantic Ocean away from other civilization, and they built this. I mean, it's advanced enough. I mean, they were known by other races and other cultures at this time, so I mean that's possible. It also is nice about that is that it's kind of within that friendly time period with everything. And then, as you go into Tartaria, you find out that people who are from Tartaria, at least the Tartaria that we research, because there is a difference between Tartaria and the Tartars. They're two different groups altogether. Well, some of them say that they are the survivors of Atlantis. And they have the same height and advanced technology. So I'm wondering if it was one of those things where they just kind of picked up and went elsewhere again. Because that is not uncommon without history. The best example I could think of is we go into the Phoenicians. The Phoenicians eventually colonize northern Africa, and they are actually over. The Phoenicians are located where what we consider north of Israel and south of Syria, that area nowadays. But eventually they colonized North Africa near where Libya is, and they eventually developed the Carthaginians. So it's not uncommon for a society to pick up and discover and plant themselves elsewhere. I mean, Western Europe did that to North America. Rome would do that around the world. Russia did that. It's a very common trait. So what stops another ancient culture or ancient group doing the exact same thing? And why else would there be so much, hushness about Tartaria? It would probably because there is something there that is just that's not niche, does not. Well, if you were to put this towards modern history and the mythos that we have discussed, that we've created, it just wouldn't add up.
Well, and
Yeah,
it
it
would
doesn't
totally
follow the
discount
narrative.
all the religions.
Yeah. I mean, they've already set a specific type of narrative for a reason, so they don't want to do anything to scramble that up.
What was that, Amária? I missed that.
Sorry, I've got traffic in and out here. I had to mute myself. It would discount the religions basically, because it would be bringing the history that's been hidden or rewritten. I mean, I really think so. I've heard actually, and I'm trying to think where, that like North and South Pole, which would make sense because the energy field is shaped like a torus. And so it makes me wonder, is it like a natural formation when the earth was cooling that it had holes on the top and the bottom, which would kind of make sense if they're talking about, the magma cooling. And so you've got that potential for energy to make like a sun in the middle outside. I mean, these are theories that I find interesting. That hollow earth or honeycomb earth, both of those theories I find plausible. I've also heard up here by Salt Lake, up Little Cottonwood Canyon, there's the deep underground base that the military and the Mormon church own. And there's a bunch of big caverns down there that, I mean, it's huge lakes that they have, the aquifer, all the water for, all these deserts that they have under the Rocky Mountains here.
Yeah.
And I've seen some of the water formations over at Mount Timpanogos. They've got it's like maybe 30 minutes or so away south of us by Provo, Orem, or Timpanogos. And that's hollow. They actually take you through a tour, and they've got like stalactites. You can see where there's underground rivers and lakes. But supposedly Salt Lake, like this entrance is one of the Agartha entrances.
There you go.
Amária and Agartha have much in common. What do you think about that?
Well, I just want to say, I'm on team toroidal Earth, not flat Earth, not hollow Earth, toroidal Earth. Toroidal
So
is
what's
torus.
the difference on toroidal Earth and the hollow Earth? Like flat Earth, I think is just
No. So toroidal. I think I mentioned this before. Toroidal it literally means donut shaped, but it's not like we're not talking like a Krispy Kreme glazed donut type of thing. Toroidal can also mean something that is bulging on the sides.
Right, kind of like an apple.
Yeah, that could be considered a torus.
Yeah,
and that's another form of toroidal. Kind of like how triangles and squares can have different sizes and shapes,
right.
but they're still classified as that. The same thing as a torus.
It makes sense. I can see that energy field.
Yes.
So.
It was actually kind of funny because when you talk about like inner Earth and hollow Earth things, because actually there may be some connection to that, because when you learn about like Admiral Byrd and his experience at the northern pole and at the southern pole, he does talk about how he talks about really weird and unexplainable things. Like, for example, he once apparently to his journal, he flew an airplane off an aircraft carrier in the southern pole, and once you got past the ice sheet, above where the ice wall, that massive ice sheet is, like, we can't go over, because apparently if we go too far over it, we just don't have fuel to get past it. Apparently that gives away to very lush green grass, trees, and the Apparently, there are holes that holes like tunnels that lead elsewhere. He didn't just really describe what happened after that because he was running low on fuel, so he had to turn around. But he said that that is very similar to what they found on the northern pole. And I'm wondering if maybe those two poles are connected to one another, you know, almost like a straw, right? You put a straw down, you have one side, and then you have the other side, like that.
Either that or like because the Taurus thing is, I definitely agree on that shape. That's why I'm thinking when the Earth is spinning and it's cooling, it's kind of like when you spin a bucket and like all the water will stay on the edges.
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
I'm thinking it would have cooled in that toroidal shape with the entrances, and then maybe with whatever energy is explosive down there, I could see where that could possibly have like the plasma energy of the sun, because you know it's different than what we've been taught. It's not this burning ball of gas, but it's actually some sort of electromagnetic plasma, from what I am
The
trying
sun's
to
actually
gather.
alive. The sun's actually
Right.
alive.
It's a
And
lot like
I mean,
the
it's
GANs.
yeah, it's in spite of the fact, you know, it's extremely hot, it still has life. One of the things I'm questioning though, because Earth has 4 poles, do we have that same magnetic pole thing, and we have north and south? Do we have the same going in the other direction too? Would it almost look like a clover, sort of, if you will?
Yeah, it's possible. It is possible.
That means that same shape that you see north and south also is the other way as well, you know, so it almost looks like kind of almost like a sort of almost like a 4-leaf clover shape if you just stuck Earth right in the middle of that 4-leaf clover type look, and you just get the outer edges of it.
Possible. You know what's interesting about that is that a lot of the different descriptions that we have about Earth and its composition, they are for the most part, they're theories, because no one's actually gotten past the crust. No one's gone to the mantle. Heaven knows we've never gone to the inner core or the outer core. Supposedly we have a nickel iron inner core, but then again, I don't think we've ever actually gotten core samples whatsoever. In fact, a lot of stuff that we have when it comes to physical science, you know, earth science, is for the most part speculative. You know,
It would be so fascinating to see an actual snapshot of like our Earth just in different positions.
Yeah, and in the other point of view, I mean, I kind of had a little theory. I got yelled at about it. This is just a small theory, but if you can picture sort of a ball, and if you took like a ring, like a type of ring you play ring toss with or whatever, if you took it and put it on top of a ball, like how you would put a crown on top of your head, just a simple round ring on top, that is all we're seeing of of Earth for us. But when NASA has that YouTube live where you can watch Earth slowly spin, you know, she's spinning fast, but you can watch her turn and everything if you have nothing better to do. I'm actually thinking that they took this image that all we have access to is this top with the ice thing, and it really was stretched over and saying that's what the whole Earth looks like. And the reason why we have the argument with the flat Earth people is because even though Earth is not flat, so I don't want any hate mail coming in, but even though it's not flat, we're only getting this top part right here. And so that's why it can appear flat, but there's this whole rest of the ball below us, you know.
Yeah.
So that's
for sure.
And so that's why there's only 7 continents up there. There's way more continents below, and we're not allowed to know about it for the time being. And it does kind of explain for the experiment that I was doing one time. I had a theory because I found it weird when I was flying in a plane one time, and I found the same amount of clouds in the same spot going and coming back when the plane did pretty much the same route. And I was gone for a week. How is those set of clouds still there in that same spot? What are you hiding down there?
That's an
And I
interesting.
clocked it in with my notebook. I took a notebook and I clocked in with the time when I'm going out, when I'm going back in. And then, the clouds were still there.
Wow. Weird.
They was covering for a certain duration of the trip. It was thick clouds covering below. And then eventually they would taper off and you would see, down below again, those little tiny houses that look like the ones you see in a Monopoly game, But it's just that it looked weird. And I did it on several of my plane trips just to see. And it's going in different places. So there are some clouds that are actually stationary. And we don't know why.
Well, let's put this even further, right? Why is it that there are almost every country in the world that would never agree on things in general, all agree that it is not permissible for a person to go to the Southern Pole unless you have specific permission to do so? If you're not in a science, if you're not there for a science, in one of the science labs or in one of the small little settlements that we have, if you go anywhere outside of those permissible areas, it is not allowed at all. Something to think about.
So yeah, they have so much military literally guarding those areas.
Yeah.
We're not talking about just a little toll booth.
Well, it's not just that.
Type guard. They have a whole armada worth of shit up there. I'm not kidding.
Well, and there's similar things like that, like for instance in the Grand Canyon, where people are not allowed to go. There's different places on this planet that's blocked off like that. Yet here we are, like, there's D-class stuff about Egyptian things found. And that's definitely been coming out about the Antarctica stuff too.
What's interesting is that every time we get like declassified documentations from like the different intelligence agencies, the story they tell is very different than the history books and how they describe things. Mm-hmm. Like Tartaria, right? Let's go into that one when we're talking time. There was a declassified CIA document that came out, I think it was in the 50s or 60s. And this actually was from a translated, intercepted document from the KGB. And it was talking about the preservation of the Tartarian past. But what really confused me was, are we talking about Tartarian as in, Tartaria? Or are we talking Tartarian as in the Tartars? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't even know.
That's fascinating. I mean,
yeah,
there's a lot of stuff that Russia finds interesting enough to research to the point of government military involvement, including, as a lot of people are aware of that listen to the show, of course, the secret space programs, military abduction programs. There's a lot of interesting stuff, psychic programs, a lot of stuff.
Well, a lot of times the do not enter ports that they have, there was always theories that they lead to other parts of Earth. Their entrance of leading to other parts of Earth doesn't necessarily have to be underground or in the center of the Earth. Because we're only allowed that top portion, that's us anyway, allow the top portion, it leads to the other proportions of Earth, the other continents. There isn't 7 continents on this planet. There's far more than 7 continents. Yeah. Well, from what I understand, I believe they're 40 something. Don't quote me.
I've heard of that. Yeah. Well, and supposedly Arkansas somewhere has entrances. There's a lot of caverns there in the Ozarks.
Yeah.
A lot of big crystals, formations.
We've had some blocked off areas in the Mark Twain caverns.
Really?
A lot of blocked off areas you're not allowed to go, and they just, say it's dangerous and all that. It's the excuse. But, So, and then that's center of the United States even.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it wouldn't be surprising if they, up in the Ozark area, they would have entrances. But I think these are all entrances to certain personnel. Some of them are not human. Some of them are human. Some of them are part of the military world, if you will, or, high clearance or whatever. And they can go to and from our world, if you will, to the other parts of Earth, with certain clearance. And it wouldn't be surprising if the rules are actually the same all over Earth. And I mean the real all over Earth, not just our section, but over all of their section. They're not allowed to really venture into our territory either. And I'm talking about the normal citizen, if you will.
Yeah.
And, so I don't know how aware they are of us. You know what I mean? So it would be interesting. Well, it would be interesting to see because I think that, in my belief, there is excuse me, there's a lot of species on this planet, and they talk about, alien invasion, stuff like that. They've been here forever. There's so many species on this planet. Well more than 20 species that live on this planet. We're talking about, bipeds type species or aquatic species. We have a lot here, and it's just that a lot of it's remained hidden from us. And so that's why the do not enter for the sake of, because of that.
Be fascinating to see what else comes out as things keep rolling out on disclosure.
Well, there's one of the things that are interesting. One of the things that are recently opened up, and I believe I don't believe it's not in Congress. I believe it's the military. They opened up an office to deal with all of the aerospace phenomena that's been happening lately.
That's so funny. Just wow. I've seen a few Blackhawks around too, because there's a lot of
those satellites, those pesky satellites. You know
Ah,
what though? I've actually thought
satellite.
that this is just a theory. I actually thought that the so-called space junk, they had to explain away the battles that they have going on in space. There's always going to be, idiotic ETs with their ships. They do something stupid or they do something wrong or whatever. And naturally, if you're going to blast a ship away due to some sort of battle, some of that stuff is probably going to get into Earth gravitational pull. Sometimes we're going to end up being that target and get some of their junk. I don't believe there's actually space junk floating all around our planet. I think it's pretty well kept, maintained, clean because of the ships that are going in and out of the area. It would have been freaking too dangerous to have space stations, near Earth and ships going in and out everywhere. If it was cluttered, it's kind of the same thing. Nobody's going to walk around in a living room with a bunch of Lego pieces laying around. We call it foot landmine, and nobody's going to walk in that living room. It's much better if it's clean.
Right? You keep your airport runways clean. So
yeah. So I don't think that this space junk thing, I'm sure there's going to be some bitsy debris and stuff always, it's the same thing when a plane crashes. You can't get every little nippy piggy pieces, right? But I don't think it's as bad as they said. I think it's just their way of explaining that if they ever have to go into battle with another ship, possibly an enemy ship or vice versa, and there's just going to be some sort of damage done to any craft, space station, etc., it's going to end up on, sometimes end up on our side of the line, and it's just the way it is. So, and it was just, I think it was like the 80s or 90s, they were really heavily talking about space junk. They even did an Omni Max Theater presentation on it and stuff like that. So, but we've had ships coming in and out off and on our planet throughout, I don't know how long, forever. It's a lot longer than you think. Right. Even what we call ancient Egypt, which is really not ancient. I think they skewed the timeline of how things really are. I don't think the timelines is stretched out as they say it is either. But we've been having activities forever. We've been, having all kinds of visitors. We have, it's just kind of the same thing the way that it is at the military bases. You have, civilian personnel that has access to go in there. You have military personnel, you have, certain visitors, and you're going to have visitors that are not entirely human, as well, working in the military bases all the time. And it will work on our part of the world as well as, any other parts of the globe, as well as the other parts of the solar system. We have a lot of ships and a lot of space stations that are literally at Star Trek level. You can, once you dock there and you walk around normally like you do on Earth. The only difference is it just kind of feels like when you get out of the swimming pool and you try to walk around for a few seconds, everything feels like super heavy at first. And it takes a little extra muscles to kind of move around. It's sort of like that at first when you end up on those space stations or ships, because the gravity is just a little bit different. It's a little bit, I think, a little bit sharper or harsher, if you will. But other than that, from what I can tell, it's, it's just, I just think that all the stuff that they're putting in, and I don't understand why they're hiding it so much all these years, because we're so adaptable. Look how we adapted to the sickness, to all the crazies that's happened in the last 2 years. We can all adapt very quickly. So if they actually let this kind of information out, 20 to 30 years ago, by now, this would have been all old news. But they had this control, and they wanted to control us and let us believe that, hey, humans are the only ones that are around here. And if there's possible anybody else, there's probably green or gray. That's all you're going to get, I've seen more variety in a salad bar, so I don't know. I'm just not convinced that that's all there is.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the time, because there is a theory out there that talks about a phantom time, that there's a phantom timeline. And it essentially says that the last 1,000 years didn't exist. And the reason they say this is that if you go to a lot of the old writings and how they used to do like 1,000, the 1,000 looks like an I, not an actual, or an L. It doesn't actually look like a 1. And so what you do is you actually take away 1,000 years. And the reason he talks about that is because of this guy really goes back to Charlemagne. And the reason it goes to Charlemagne is it has to do with how he is described. He's, from what his account was, and this is for Menko, he was saying how Charles the Great had the description of at least 5 different kings throughout history. So he's wondering if they combined all 5 kings into one person instead of it actually being one individual person. Especially when you get to
kind of like, what is it, Ra and God and Horus and Jesus Christ and Zeus, and like the different,
all the different
they all kind of,
Horus,
there's a pattern.
I think they all knew each other, but basically around the same time frame. I think they're just teachers. They just constantly, went around and kind of give people the idea of how things should work out. But of course, it got skewed.
Yeah,
over time.
Well, a lot of this apparently changed under a man named Scaligeri, that's where you get Scaligeri in time, and that's how we learned about things like BC, AD, during the time of Pope Gregory. Forgot which one that was exactly, because there's popes have popes like Gregory, Paul, Pius.
Well, they were pushing the whole worship thing. Mm-hmm. Because back then, when they were around, it was more of a teacher thing. Nobody was worshiping any of them.
Yeah. I don't know.
So somehow everybody got switched over to the whole worship idea of them,
Yeah. It may be a remnant of a previous thing. Some people think it's an old Canaanite tradition, especially when you deal with the hat of the Pope is actually the shape of a fish. So it may actually be the worshiping of a of a fish deity, not an actual Christian deity, because, and this is me coming out more as a Gnostic than a Christian, because a lot of things that happen with modern Christianity really changed when Constantine did a lot of stuff. When he did the Nicene Creed, when he established the Church of Rome, all of that stuff drastically changed different lessons and how things were taught and what is considered right or wrong. A lot of that changed literally overnight, where you became what was previously a persecuted cult is now a well-respected state religion.
Yeah, isn't it amazing how many things actually change overnight?
Yeah.
I'm just absolutely impressed. Look how the most recent things we had to deal with change overnight. You know, the definitions of things, the rules of things that have to do with gender, things that have to do with the medical world, things. I think we're a very adaptable species. A little too adaptable for our own good, in my opinion.
On one hand, it was overnight, and on another, it's been prepared for generations.
Yeah.
Just with the way that we've been.
Well, they're using the same methods they use. They already have this prepared. They have, the problem reaction solution deal, They haven't changed their tactics in thousands of years.
Yeah, true. Very true.
If it ain't broke,
It's
don't
sad that
fix
none of
it.
us has caught on yet and going, oh, I know what you're doing,
Yeah.
People just still plod along with whatever narrative just gets thrown out there and just go along and swim with it. Somebody can start swimming upstream instead, and those who do, you get really ridiculed. But it's just that I just seen how when you watch the History Channel, if you watch it awake, you can actually see how many things do not line up when they talk about anything, whatever it is. If they talk about Egypt, or they talk about differences of how they had an episode on how the changing times of food, but how they ate during caveman times and how we eat now and stuff like that. And there's just constant holes in their theories.
Yeah.
But I think the History Channel was definitely one of the things to help keep people asleep. Definitely.
Well, certainly.
So
Really, really interesting discussion. Maybe some stuff to kind of look at and bring forward on our next talk. I like this when we get together and we've got some stuff that's a little out of the norm, kind of those bedtime stories that you were doing for a while there, Alex. We're going to do that again. It's pretty cool stuff.
once upon a time, there were scary ETs that invaded our planet.
Woo!
Dark and stormy night during a dark and stormy night, right?
You want a scary bedtime story? Look at what Paris looked like in the turn of the 20th century and how it looked now.
So wow.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
The Middle East. Oh, so what is it? Saudi Arabia.
It's really it's really amusing how everyone's like, oh, electrically powered vehicles, and then we've been using that for over 100 years, and it just recently became fashionable again, even though it was considered the best way to do things, but not the way we're currently doing it.
It doesn't make any sense the way we are currently doing. We're actually, the electric cars that they want us to use is actually going to siphon up more carbon footprint or whatever greens. It's just going to cause way more emissions than the idea that how we just do the regular vehicle. But if you notice, you can notice actually, if you sit back and look at how much we are being controlled, look at all the stuff that's gotten advanced and look at all the stuff that's being held back. So our vehicles are actually pretty much the same as they were for how long, Alex?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
More than about
It's
100 years.
World
Yeah,
War II.
but look at
nothing more than
look how fast our phone has gone from this rotary stick your finger in and run the dial around.
Right.
Yeah, till this, iPhone and Android type phones that we have now, these smartphones with
one I'm
has
using right now in my
calendar and
hand.
calculator and everything. It does more than just a phone now.
Well, the crazy thing is, even with the simple gas motors that we had that had the carburetors that we used to work
they're
on
so
in the
much better
80s
because
and
you
earlier.
could
My uncle, before he passed, like years ago, he had rigged it up to where he was getting about 200 miles to the gallon.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
he went to the oil companies to try to patent it, and they bought it. And guess what? It disappeared. And they told him he wasn't going to mass produce it or anything. He
Wow.
supposedly kept his car on it for a while, but that's terrible. Like, we could be.
Oh, they did the same thing. The guy who did the
beyond that.
hydro car, the guy who invented the
God,
hydro
yeah.
car, he disappeared.
Shit.
Yeah,
apparently
I think they poisoned him, didn't they, or something?
oh, they shot him.
Yeah, they shot him. Okay.
One of the guys who was patenting a hydro-powered car was a
Yeah.
victim of the the Buffalo shooting in the mall earlier this year.
Yeah.
And the funny, ironic, weird thing, I don't know exactly which word you want to use, was that the perpetrator of this crime went halfway across the country just to go to this mall. It happened to be this guy in this freaking mall where he was in the process of patenting his technology.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you actually go too far against the narrative of the bad guys, you're gonna get it.
Yeah, it's too bad. I would have loved to have one of Uncle Delbert's vehicles. That would have been a nice gadget these days.
Someone invented one that runs on the crystal, very similar, like the kind of a kyber crystal, like how the ships are run. The ships
Oh, okay.
all run on all the ships and the space stations and all that are out of our planet. They all run on this crystal. I think it's also a certain type of fuel connected with it, but still.
If you want disclosure when it comes to that stuff, I highly recommend watching the movie Atlantis: The Lost Empire. It was an old Disney movie, and the way they powered their ships was okay. So each person had a crystal that was like a necklace, right? And that crystal, if it placed it into the craft, they could turn it like a key, and that thing will power the entire craft. And it was also zero grav. So
yeah,
that was a cool movie. I remember that years ago.
It's my favorite movie, my favorite Disney movie. I think it was.
And that's not the only one.
Oh, mine's the Emperor New Groove.
Star Trek and Star Wars, they use crystals.
Shoot.
Well, you have dilithium, and then you have kyber crystals for Star Wars, and you have dilithium crystals for Star Trek.
Crystal. That's why we love our rocks. I've got them all over my house.
This is where being a sci-fi nerd is very helpful because it's kind of relevant, surprisingly.
Right.
Yeah, so those of you who are listening, if you're just going, oh, that's just TV, that's just movie, now that's just disclosure, guys. And really, just that's how they put it out there.
Skipping a jump.
Yeah.
Interesting ways.
And you can actually, some of the crystals, you can actually take a really good tuning fork. We're not talking about the little ones, but the bigger ones that have loud sounds. And you can actually, connect it with whatever your crystals you have. Clear quartz, one of them. Lumerian is another. Those crystals, it resonates it like by 1,000-fold. It can really kick ass. Makes any of your crystals kick butt if you actually have a big enough. The other one is also you can put a crystal in your singing bowls.
Right.
So that actually amplifies them as well. So when you put certain types of energy into a crystal, it kind of gives you like an energy return. and basically like a really cool battery.
Well, it's just the potential. It has the potential of being what's called a self-perpetuating machine.
Yeah.
Right.
Self-perpetuating machine. What it does is that it actually releases more energy than it actually takes in, and so
Okay. There's a lot of
So-
generators like that out there that you can actually create. Some of them out of like composting materials and things.
yeah,
You can get the right
Yeah.
amount of pressure to drive it.
So, yeah.
Exactly. And
Like,
It's like
I mean, this is why they're killing us off for these things, because they want us to shut up about it, because they would be out of business. The whole
pretty-
fight that we're doing right now with the Keystone Pipeline and all these energy, all of that whole arguing that's going on right now would be totally moot if we had these technologies out.
well, one of the few things that we could definitely do with all of these magnets and things like that is the idea of what's it called? Electrogravitics.
Yeah,
That's one of my favorite texts talk about. Is just
I love that. Yeah.
and it's not even like a wacky thing that came out of nowhere. I mean, there were people that were literally doing experiments. I believe his name was Dr. Townsend, was doing things back in, I think it was the 40s. It might be the 50s, but it was during the middle of the 20th century. He was doing things with these discs. You know how we normally talk about the traditional shape of a UFO, that normal disc shape. Well, he was running electrical current on it, but it was not attached or anything. It was just had a current on it, and it was able to levitate.
Nice.
It
I've
was able-
seen
Yeah.
things like that, or
And those
batteries.
crafts, well, yeah, and they have the modern the crafts that they have, especially the ones that are not ours. That's how they can go from space to our atmosphere to land to water. They can do all of it, and they can zoom down. They can turn it on a dime. They can do absolutely everything. Extremely maneuverable.
And that's because there are 4 fundamental forces in the universe, right? You have weak force, the strong forces, the weak forces, electromagnetism, and gravity. And the weakest one is gravity. You can do things with electromagnetism that will literally negate gravity. So, yeah, there's a lot to it, and a lot more to be explored.
Oh yeah, definitely topics we can explore again. You guys, this has been really cool. I think we've gone a little bit over time, an hour. I think we probably could call it, and let's do another one of these. Talk about some cool technologies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys coming on. It's fun. I know we kind of got new things we're looking at, but grateful for you guys, grateful for all our listeners. Thank you so much for C4OC Radio Network, for Rev Radio Las Vegas for airing us, and other places as well. You guys, it's been good chatting. This is Amária Sweet. It's nice to see you, Sue. Nice to see you, Alex. Thank you so much again. Love you guys.
Have a
Much
good night.
love. Thank you.